Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 7th of June, 2024. I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, joined in the studio with our very special co-host. Once again, joining us live on the radio is Brother Saiful Islam, Barrister from Luton. Assalamu alaikum. Saiful Islam, how are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I've got to say, Saiful Islam, so I actually... I don't know if you had a chance to watch the leadership debate a few days ago on ITV. I don't know if you.
No, I haven't.
It's been crazy. I've got to say, and there's a lot of accusations about Rishi Sunak lying about this £2,000 tax that he says that Labour is going to charge. We'll talk about that later in about an hour's time. But listeners, welcome to tonight's programme. Of course, we're dealing out to the good people of Luton and surrounding areas tonight, and also to the good people of Nottingham, Sheffield, Derby and Peterborough and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. So welcome to all of you. And coming up just in a moment, we're going to be talking about the situation in Gaza, as we have been for the past few months, unfortunately, shall I say, because it's been going on for as much as 7 months now, this whole situation in Gaza, and what many are calling is just the continuing unjust, illegitimate genocide of the Palestinian people. This has gone way beyond a action and reaction. It's becoming something a lot worse, and we've seen, countries going to the International Criminal Court and protesting about the situation. But we're going to be talking about something specific tonight because, as you know, about a week ago, the US proposed a ceasefire. And now we want to understand where the world is at in terms of that ceasefire, where the Israelis are at and where Hamas is at. And it's interesting that US, after having pushed back on a ceasefire for such a long time, for many, many months now, has come out just over a week ago saying it's time to have a cessation of hostilities and stop the fighting. Well, joining me in a moment will be Rami Khouri on the line. He's a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. He's going to be talking to me in a moment. But also in a half an hour's time, we're going to be talking about Qurbani and asking the question, how exactly do you do a Qurbani and what are the rules and regulations for the sacrifice? For example, Saiful, I don't know if you know, but you can't sacrifice a chicken.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, there may be people on a budget. I know there's a cost of living crisis, right? But can you sacrifice a chicken? We'll talk about that in a bit as well, answering those questions. But most importantly, in my humble opinion, of course, Qurbani is important because it's something it's essential for all of us to do before Eid, which is been agreed upon as next Sunday. Right, inshallah. Which is nice because Eid's falling on a Sunday, I think the 16th of June, according to the majority of people. Of course, there'll be a few outliers here and there, as usual, even though the first of Dhul Hijjah was today, according to the Saudis. But there are obviously disagreements on that, and I'm sure there'll be people doing it at other times. But in the next hour, we're going to be talking about the Muslim vote. So we're concentrating on the election on the 4th of July, of course. This is the election in the UK. And we know that somebody from either the Conservative, Rishi Sunak, or the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, one of them two is going to be Prime Minister. And the question is who is the right person and who do we vote for locally? So if you're in Luton, north or south, or if you're in Nottingham, Sheffield, if you're in Derby or Peterborough, who the heck do you vote for? Because there is one organisation that's been formulated by the majority of Muslim bodies, and they're known as the Muslim Vote. There's a new campaign out there called the Muslim Vote, and we're going to be finding out about that in about an hour's time. They're going to be telling us or suggesting to us, gently nudging us to vote for a specific candidate in our constituencies. So that's going to be interesting. We'll be talking to the people who started that particular campaign and understanding why they've started that. And what do you do, for example, if in your constituency where you live, let's just say in Luton North, there are multiple Muslim candidates. Let's just say there's a Muslim candidate standing for the Workers' Party. There's a Muslim candidate standing for as an independent. Who do you vote for then when there's a clash of Muslims in your constituency? What are these guys saying? We'll be talking about that and more in about an hour's time. So stay tuned, listeners. Lots of interesting things coming up on tonight's program. But right now, I want to go straight to somebody on the line, and he is with us right now. His name is Rami Khouri. He's a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. and also a columnist for Al Jazeera and a journalist with 50 years of experience covering the Middle East, a very region that we want to cover right now. And I want to say good evening, Rami, from the UK.
And good afternoon to you from Cambridge in the New World near Boston.
Amazing. Nice to hear from you. And I hope the weather is well in Boston, Massachusetts, in Cambridge. It's a lovely place, I've got to say. Been there a few times myself, and delighted to have you on the program. So, Rami, just take us through with the current backdrop of the ceasefire. I mean, we know that the Americans, through their president, Joe Biden, actually asked for a ceasefire and asked Hamas, was insisting that Hamas accept this deal. But to me, it seems as though there are elements of the Israeli government, very right-wing elements, that don't want to accept this deal. What's the current situation, and what's going to happen next, in your opinion? Over to you.
Well, the current situation really is not clear as to the specifics. The fact that Biden came out suddenly last Friday and quite dramatically from the White House, himself speaking in person, said, here's a plan for a ceasefire, exchange of prisoners, rebuilding Gaza, letting in humanitarian aid, and then ultimately negotiating a permanent peace. And he said this is something that the Israelis, he said this was an Israeli plan, but he presented it to the world, which is kind of bizarre, though not so much, because there's really very little difference between Israeli and American policy these days. But the fact that he did this in this way is really a giveaway to the real motives, which I'll get to in a second. But none of the Americans say this is important to do. The Israelis and Hamas have indicated in different ways that it's something they agree on a lot of it, but they need to negotiate some parts of it. But then the plan has built into it more negotiations for the final status issues. But the fascinating thing is that the Americans, after 7.5 months of enthusiastic genocidal warfare by the Israelis and the Americans together, this is a joint Israeli-American genocide. The U.S. funds it, provides all the military, most of the military equipment, gives it diplomatic protection at the UN and other places, and now threatens to sanction the International Criminal Court because they're looking to arrest Netanyahu. It's quite extraordinary how deeply involved the United States is, and that's why I call this an American-Israeli joint assault on Gaza. And Biden enthusiastically, passionately supported the war, refused to do a ceasefire, and suddenly he comes out with this great drama from the White House. Now, the obvious reason is that he's a politician, and he's a politician in trouble. And politicians in trouble do desperate things. And this is a desperate move by the United States, as it is by...
What I don't understand though, Remy, thank you for that backdrop. It definitely, the optics of it definitely look as what you describe in terms of desperation from the current American administration, especially with Trump on the potential horizon, and his support is just growing week by week, even after the recent court case where he lost and was the first president in history to call, to have committed a felony, or former president in history to have committed a felony. This is actually a pretty interesting development where Biden, as you suggested, is becoming more and more desperate. What I don't understand, though, is that, as you quite rightly said, he pitched it as an Israeli proposal. But then we saw in the days after last Friday, right-wing elements of the Israeli government coming forward and saying, hey, if Netanyahu goes forward with this proposal, we will then eject ourselves from the government, and no longer will the current government have a majority. What's going on there? I mean, how do you see that playing out?
Well, this is so fascinating because inside the United States, you have really serious dynamics that are pressing on Biden and to make him desperate to do this, to stop the war. Because otherwise he's going to lose the election, because Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, progressive Jewish Americans, and others have clearly made their point to him that if you keep doing this, Biden, in the genocidal attack on Gaza, we're not going to support you. and you're going to lose the election in November because they have a particular pressure that they can exert this coalition of these groups, because in 6 of the swing states, as they're called, which are really the states that will determine who wins the election in November. The other states are pretty well known who's going to win. But in the swing states, Biden is behind in all of the polling in all of these states, which is really scary for the Democrats. So you have these internal pressures in the U.S. In Israel, you have a similar range of several internal pressures. You have the extreme right-wing fascists who are, telling him, if you accept this, we're going to drop out of the government. Now, that would normally require a new election, but in this case, some of the centrists, or they're not really centrists, but they're just less extremist than these Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and those guys. The less extremist right-wing Israelis have told Netanyahu, if these 2 guys drop out, we will support you and you can keep a new coalition going. So that's one issue. Another issue is there's intense pressure on the government from the families of the hostages, the Israelis whose family members are being held in Gaza, and they're really, really pushing hard to have a ceasefire. And then you have other pressures on the Israelis from the military, and who, to a large extent, were made to understand that many of the military feel that Netanyahu has made a total mess of this, politically and strategically and militarily, and they really want him to find a way.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rami. Hold the line there, because I want to go to Saiful Islam here with me in the studio. And Saiful Islam, sir, what's your perception of what's going on at the moment? And I know that you've done a little bit of looking into this today. What are your thoughts on what's going on and the backdrop to this, and where you think this is headed?
Well, Jazakallah khairan, thank you for that. I wholeheartedly agree with our guest. He's spot on. And of course, what I would add is that from my reading of the situation, it seems as though where Biden says, here is the plan, and this is how it's going to be. It's going to be a 3-phase ceasefire, and Hamas must accept it. It comes across as though it's a plan that Biden has come up with Netanyahu, with Israel, suggesting that, and implying that Israel is fully on board, and it is only Hamas that needs to accept it. So, and then for ministers within the Netanyahu's government to come out and say, these are not people on the fringes, by the way. We're talking about ministers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. To say that, it seems to be a professionally embarrassing situation for Biden, because it's all gone very muddy, isn't it? Because we just don't know what the situation is, whether it was actually agreed between them or not, or if it was agreed, have things changed. It's just simply not clear. But for America for so long to say, whereas we know Palestinians and Hamas, they were always ready for a ceasefire, provided that right conditions were in place, right?
That's right, yeah.
And even now, we know that Hamas is saying that, yes, we will do that as long as it is permanent. What we do not want is the exchange of hostages and then for Israel to go back to doing what it was doing previously.
And that's the, I think, contention point. Thank you for that,
Exactly.
Saiful Islam. So that's the contention point, right, Rami? Is the whole nature of the permanency of this ceasefire, because it seems to me, as somebody from outside in, that when you look at the details of this 3-phase plan that Saiful Islam just talked about, it does seem to me that the Israelis are being a little bit blurry, shall we say, or ambiguous around the permanency of the ceasefire. I mean, what's your interpretation?
Yes, I think Saiful Islam is correct, and it's more than blurry. It's these guys, Netanyahu and Biden, they're professional politicians. Professional politicians do things that normal people don't do. They lie, they exaggerate, they make promises they know they can't keep, they deceive people. They do all kinds of things which are accepted in the realm of politics, unfortunately, in most countries around the world, if the people are not held accountable. This is what's going on now. You've got Netanyahu and Biden and others saying different things. It's not clear if they agreed on this before. It seems that they didn't formally coordinate the Israelis and the Americans, that Biden would do this. The stages of the ceasefire, the 3 stages, issues will be negotiated down the road. But the critical one is for Hamas. The critical one is to stop the war for good, not just a temporary ceasefire, permanently with the U.S. and other guarantees, and to get the Israelis totally out of Gaza with no residual presence, no security control, nothing. In return, the Hamas says we will accept the permanent ceasefire. In other words, Hamas won't attack Israel. And so that's critical for Hamas, and to get the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners released in Israel. So all those points are in the plan, but they're not definitively spelled out. And the same for the Israelis in terms of what they want. They're getting most of what they want, but there are a few areas in terms of their presence in Gaza, the future governance of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. These are issues that also remain to be agreed. So this is a notional peace plan that has most of the key elements that both sides need, but it's not a complete package yet, and it has to be negotiated. And these 2 sides don't trust each other, understandably.
Yeah, and Remy, they don't trust each other. There's definitely a trust issue. And I'm just reading as well today that Netanyahu is going to be addressing U.S. Congress on the 24th of July. To me, it just feels like this whole timeline, and look, I'm not normally one for conspiracy theories, but it just feels like this timeline has been predetermined. And the fact that Netanyahu is going into the U.S. to speak to U.S. Congress on the 24th of July, the fact that there's a timeline that's being kind of advocated by the US last week, it just feels like the carpet is being rolled out slowly. I do feel, though, also that when you read the reaction from the right-wing elements of Netanyahu's government, and let's just be clear, Netanyahu is bad, according to the majority of people who are siding with the Palestinians in this. He is really bad when it comes to the truth. He's got a record of corruption on the, in the courts. That's no secret. That's actually, he's been condemned by the courts as well. Some very harsh words said about him by judges in Israeli courts. But he's got people who are even arguably worse than him in terms of extremism and the Zionist ideology in his government. And these guys, some are suggesting, are playing the long game. They actually want this to stretch out till the end of the year, until Donald Trump potentially comes into power and then really endorses Israel's occupation over the Palestinian territories as they are today, and the small amounts of land they have left that's all fragmented, and then really cement that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the Israeli government is playing the long game and they do want to stretch this out as long as they can until potentially a Trump administration comes back in?
Yeah, there are certainly members of the coalition government who want to do that, and Netanyahu is probably one of those, because the longer he stays as prime minister, the more protection he has. But he's not going to stay prime minister forever, so at some point he has to face the music and face the reality. Both the International Criminal Court wants him, and the indictments in Israeli courts for corruption and other things. There are members of the cabinet who would like to fight forever, but there's widespread, I think, realization now, more and more clear across Israeli society, that the majority of people feel that this war is a catastrophe, and in every level. Israel has been condemned by the 2 highest courts in the world. The people all over the world in public opinion and marches and UN voting, the population of most of the entire world is opposed to what Israel is doing. So Israel is becoming more isolated. It's got no clear plan how to win this war. It's not going to achieve its aim of getting rid of Hamas. So all of its strategic goals, including getting all the hostages, haven't been achieved and won't be achieved purely by military might, because there's one big flaw in what Israel is doing. Israel thinks it's still 1967, and we're not in 1967 or 73. There's been a significant increase in the military capabilities of various Arab groups who are called the Resistance Front, and these are not governments. These are Hezbollah and Hamas and Ansarullah in Yemen and others who are close to Yemen, close to Iran, but are really nationalist groups. And these are really able groups, and they are working together to push back against Israel. And Israel hasn't realized that its military might doesn't allow it to enforce its will as it used to do on the Arab world. And they can't figure out how to deal with that. You have really big challenges to all of the political personalities involved. But Hamas is the one that's saying the least right now. They gave an initial positive response, but the one who's in the most hurry is Biden, because he has to get a ceasefire, or his Democratic, not only him but the whole Democratic Party is going to really plunge in November.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Rami Khouri, Distinguished Public Policy Fellow at the American University of Beirut and also columnist at Al Jazeera. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your analysis. We do need to leave it there, but we look forward to welcoming you back on the program in the future, hopefully once a permanent ceasefire is on the cards. But we do appreciate your time, Rami. Thank you for joining us. Take care.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, listeners, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Saab. And of course, Saiful Saab, what's your summary of what you've just heard? I mean, where's this going to go? What's your take?
Well, going back basically on what you just said about what the plan may be. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. How can I possibly have any trust for two nations where they carry on killing thousands and thousands of children and innocent babies and so forth? And you know, a country like US says no ceasefire. How can you possibly trust a country like that?
And so they're arming them under the table. I mean, what the irony here is the US is not independent here. They have clearly said that they side with Israel. They're on the Israeli side. They're staunch allies, or whatever you want to call them. But you can't, on one hand, try to broker peace and then give missiles under the table and say, here you go, and keep feeding missiles.
That's right.
Even though there was a gesture of stopping some weapons going when they attacked Rafah, you know, we saw the Americans actually pause some weaponry being sent. But I think that was just more tactical and strategic to show the Qataris, the Saudis, strategic allies in the Middle East, in the Arab countries, that, hey, we are taking some action. But I think it was more of a gesture than anything else. What say you?
Yeah, so what you're saying effectively, and I agree with, if that is what you're saying, United Nations, USA is actually not the right nation to be mediating here, because they're not impartial. Simple as that.
And the crazy thing is that obviously you come from a law background. How strange is it that a government sanctions an international criminal court for going after or charging a leader of one of your so-called allies, Israel? So they're they're not charging, but they are thinking of charging Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes. And the US is sanctioning an international criminal court now because of this action. I find that very strange. You couldn't make this up. Again, independence, like the ICC is meant to be an independent criminal court, and what the US is saying is you're not, or you're not doing what we want you to do, and therefore we're going to sanction, not pay you the money you rely on.
I only have one word to describe that behavior: shamelessness.
Shamelessness, absolutely. It says deeply disturbing. It says, what do you reckon? 01582-481-822. Love to hear your perspectives on what you think is going to happen next in Gaza. What you think is playing out. I've got to say, honestly, something fishy is going on. We knew that for a long time, and most of us with reasonable minds knew that, of course, there was some action and reaction in that region. Hamas did something, but even that, looking from October the 7th forward, is obtuse, right? You have to go wider. You have to look at before October the 7th and the situation. Everyone wants to forget about that and say, no, well, Hamas attacked first. Yes, but nobody is supporting Hamas here, but we have to understand that there was action and reaction. Hamas was created as a result of the actions of Israel and its so-called allies that created Israel. And nobody is saying that Jews should not exist. Everyone has a right to exist and be governed fairly and to live peacefully and to live without fear. But that's notwithstanding the Palestinians as well. And clearly that's going on. And I really hope we can see some resolution to this in the very near future. But listeners, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Saab. And of course, we're going to be talking about this topic throughout the next few weeks, as we have been throughout the last few months. But coming up in a moment after the break, we're going to be talking about Qurbani with Sheikh Suleiman Ghani. He is somebody who studied at Al-Azhar University in Egypt before studying in Medina. He's a good friend of mine, and I've done Hajj with him actually once, and we've shared a lot of times together with Sheikh Suleiman Ghani. He'll be joining us talking about Qurbani and all the essential things that you need to know about Qurbani before Eid al-Adha next week kicks off on Sunday, the 16th of June. And also, in about half an hour's time, we're talking about the Muslim vote. Exactly who do you vote for? Do you vote for Conservative? Do you vote for Labour? Or do you vote for Independence? Or maybe even none of the above? Friday Night Live. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Hi, my name is Fatima. I'm from Project Ribcage. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. It's all under Project Ribcage. We also have a website, projectribcage.com. Our message for today is, if not you, then who? Please listen to Inspire FM at 105.1.
Attention all electricians, builders and DIY enthusiasts. Capital Electrical Wholesalers are now open in Luton. It's a fully stocked branch with experienced staff on hand to help with all your electrical needs. With branches also in Greenford, Tottenham, Richmond and Ashton. Capital Electrical Wholesalers only stock the biggest names, including JCC, Saxby, Knightsbridge, Hamilton, MK, Wilex, Hager, ACO Smoke Alarms and many more. That's Capital Electrical at Unit M, Kingsway Industrial Estate. Call 01582 801122.
वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी हफ्ते के 7 दिन सुबह 9 बजे से लेकर रात 9 बजे तक खुली रहती है। हमारी सर्विसेज में शामिल हैं ट्रैवल वैक्सीनेशंस, स्टॉप स्मोकिंग, डायबिटीज चेक, बच्चों की ग़िज़ा और बहुत कुछ। लुटन और डंस्टेबल में फ्री प्रिस्क्रिप्शन, पिकअप और डिलीवरी सर्विसेज भी की जाती है। इसके अलावा आप मेडिसिन के इस्तेमाल के लिए फ्री मशवरा भी ले सकते हैं। वेस्टबोर्न फार्मेसी 198 B Dunstable Road, Luton, corner of Westbourne Road. Telephone 01582 419 432.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of purpose and impact? The East of England Ambulance Service is recruiting now. Are you seeking training in a new career or looking for a challenge in development? Start your career for life with East. Apply now for roles in frontline emergency operations, control rooms, support services and non-emergency transport. Visit www.eastamb.nhs.uk and click Join the Team. Make a real difference. Join the East of England Ambulance Service and start your career for life.
As we approach the blessed month of Zulhijjah and Eid this year, Families Relief will be performing Qurbani for the most needy Muslims, reaching out to the most vulnerable and impoverished areas like Gaza, Syria, Yemen, Pakistan and Africa, where people have not eaten meat since last year's Qurbani. Allocation is limited, so book your Qurbani today. Call 0114 365 4454 or visit familiesrelief.org.uk.
Hi, I'm Amira. I'm 17 and I'm a student at Barnfield College. Last year I came to Barnfield for the open day because I saw a media course on the website and I wanted to find out more. I found out all I need to know at the open day about the course, student life and the facilities, and I even got a free drink. I was so excited that I finally found a course for me at this college. Like me, you can find a course for you at Barnfield College's Summer Open Day on the 15th of June. Visit barnfield.ac.uk for more information.
أدب ملاحظة هوشيار
माजी हाल मुस्तकबिल की बातों के सुराग, इल्मी अदबी अफसाना शायरी और जिंदगी के राज, हवा की लहरों से बन के आवाज सुनिए हर जुमरात शाम 7 बजे प्रोग्राम चराग।
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to part 2 of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 7th of June, 2024. I'm your host, Abdul, joined in the studio with my very special co-host here in the studio, Saiful Islam Saab. Saiful Islam Saab, how's it going so far?
Good.
Yeah. Have you had a good week so far?
Busy, yes.
Busy,
and I've got another busy one coming up.
You got a busy one. I mean, you're a barrister in your day job, right?
That's right.
So that must keep you very busy. And I think you focus specifically on, is it family law?
Family and children law.
Oh my God.
Highly emotional.
Highly emotional.
Yeah, very emotional.
I can imagine family law, that must keep people like you very busy. All kinds of challenges coming
that's right.
up.
There's no recession for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or fortunately. I mean, whichever way you look at it.
Have you sleep at night?
Difficult, but it has to be done.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're talking about, in America there's an opioid crisis because a lot of people are taking opioids just to relax and calm down. Obviously, there's other ways as Muslims.
Yeah.
We have alternative therapies available to us, like turning to our creator. But sometimes when you're mentally messed up, you need someone to kind of shift you in that direction.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting you are in that position, just to be clear, without avoidance of any doubt.
Yeah.
But great to have you on the program today, and I hope we can continue to have you on the seat with me, and other presenters as well, and sharing your perspectives. But Saiful Islam is in the house, a barrister from Luton, and of course sharing his perspectives on the topic and asking some questions. But right now, listeners, I want to go to our next topic in a moment, where we're talking about Qurbani. But remember, in half an hour's time, we're talking about the election, because there are scholars coming out, literally scholars coming out in the UK saying you have to vote. If you don't vote, you are going to be causing fitna in the United Kingdom. And that's a really interesting angle and posture they are taking. And I want to understand more about this gate and this posture they're taking, because it's a very different opinion, because there is an opinion out there that says you should not vote. You should not vote for anything that is not calling for Islam specifically. And all the ex-HT guys are going to get excited here. Dare I say Khilafah, right? And we know that, organizations like Hizb ut-Tahrir, I know when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, Hizb ut-Tahrir was a thriving organization in university campuses especially. And look at them today. They are banned. They're a proscribed organization under this government. And I've never had any affiliation with Hizb ut-Tahrir as an adult, but I will say that there are a lot of educated men and women that were part of that organization now, were part of that organization then and no longer now, wondering, what their position should be. But I'm a little bit confused, Saiful Islam Saab, because there are scholars saying you should vote, and there are some scholars saying you should not vote. And I really want to study that in the next half an hour, get your perspectives as well, and how you manage this ambiguity in your mind, and hear from experts as well, because there is an organization called the Muslim Vote. And these guys have formed a body specifically for this election, saying, hey, we've created a website where you can put in your postcode and we will tell you who to vote for, who is favorable for the Muslims in this country, who is pro-Gaza and pro-Palestine, who had the right policies. And it could be a Labour candidate, it could be a Conservative candidate, though highly unlikely these days, or an independent that's coming forward. So we saw, for example, in Luton, we have some very credible independent candidates coming forward saying, vote for me, I am pro-Palestine, and I'm going to work not just for the causes that matter to the community and the constituency, but also I'm going to vote for, and I'm going to work for, obviously, the constituency that you're voting within, Luton North or South. One of those people is Atiq Malik.
Yes.
So listeners, if you don't know Atiq Malik, he's somebody who is quite, I would argue, is somebody who really has been a community leader in this community, doing all kinds of positive work. And we only see him sometimes on TV or on the radio, but actually there's a lot of good work behind the scenes. So for figureheads like Atiq coming forward saying, listen, I'm putting my name on the ballot box and I want you to vote for me, that makes me scratch my head and think, you know what, maybe we do need to support the people that are standing forward. But the question is, What do you do when there's a couple of Muslims standing up or 3 Muslims standing up in your constituency? Who the heck do you vote for? So that's going to be coming up in around half an hour's time. We'll get Saiful Islam's take on that. But I want to go right now to something else, which is an important topic for many of us who practice the Islamic faith, and that is the whole idea of Qurbani. And to cover this topic with us, we have somebody who is not a stranger to this program on the line. He is Sheikh Suleiman Ghani. He studied at Al-Azhar University in Egypt before going to Medina University and graduating from the Faculty of Hadith. Sheikh Suleiman also completed an MA in Islamic Studies from SOAS in London. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. You are live on the radio. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
MashaAllah, good to see you on your travels as always. I pray you are in the best of health and the highest of Iman, and nice to have you back on this program. And Sheikh, I want to ask you about Qurbani, because as you know, we are on the 1st of Dhul Hijjah, according to the majority of people in the world, and we're going to be celebrating Eid, inshallah, on Sunday, the 16th of June. I want to ask you, first of all, I want to understand the whole thing about Qurbani, whether it is obligatory for Muslims to perform Qurbani, and also what animals can you actually sacrifice for a Qurbani? Because, there's a couple of people that suggested doing chickens, and can you sacrifice a chicken as part of your Qurbani, especially with the cost of living crisis that we're having right now? So I want to take your take on that. But Bismillah, Sheikh, and also cutting your hair. Some people are of the opinion and sound opinion that if you do perform a Qurbani through a charity, so imagine I pay a charity to sacrifice a part of a cow or a whole cow on my behalf, or a camel or whatever it might be, or a sheep, then I can't shave my hair. What's the opinion on this, Sheikh? So if you can disambiguate some, I know there's lots of questions there, but Bismillah, over to you, and maybe I might ask you some questions as well as you're talking, so apologies if I interrupt you, but over to you, Sheikh, and good to see you again, mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan, Abdul Akbar. You made a comment at the beginning, and you already know my position that firstly, you said you entered the month of Dhul Hijjah. You started how is it that you have already made a declaration when only I'm going to do the sighting of the moon after the sunset today? So my birth of Dhul Hijjah is inshallah tomorrow, and Eid al-Adha I will be celebrating on Monday.
Or maybe you turn off your video, Sheikh, so that we can hear you properly, because you've been breaking up there. Let's try one more time. If we can turn off your video and just get the audio, that might be better. So just switching off your, there we go. Let's try again, Sheikh. Over to you. Bismillah. Let's try one more time.
Yes, Abdul Akbar, what I was trying to explain to you, that you started the program, the month of Dhul Hijjah has started, and for me it is the 29th of Dhul Qa'dah today. I am asking you that you have said that so you want to speak about Qurbani, and what is that people be doing the animal sacrifice a day before actual date, because
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. The connection is really bad, so what we're going to do is call you on a landline and come back to that. So Sheikh, stay on the line. We're going to come back to you, and we're going to phone you on your landline just to get a really good connection. We want to make sure we maximize our time with you on that. So Sheikh, we'll be right back with you in a moment, and just listen out for your phone. So tell me about this. It's interesting. Sheikh obviously has a different opinion. Sure. to add to the confusion of the Ummah. We're talking about us being confused about both. Yeah. We're also confused about when Eid is as well. That's right. But I know that majority of people are going with, shall we say, the central processing unit of the Muslim Ummah, which in this case happens to fall in the hands of the Saudis. Yeah. And the administration there, the CPU of the Ummah at the moment. Yeah. Like it or loathe them, they have the holy mosques, and they have the scholars, and we respect that and we adhere to that. Of course, many of us get a chance to do Umrah there as often as we can. Yeah. So we respect that. So they've made a decision that the 1st of Dhul Hijjah is today, and therefore from calculation the Eid will be celebrated on Sunday for people who are not on Hajj. Of course, if you're on Hajj, you don't actually celebrate Eid. For Hajjis on Sunday, they're going to start their pelting in the Jamarat, right?
That's right, yeah.
So there's no Eid for Hajjis. Many people don't know that, but actually the Masjid al-Haram is empty on Eid, except for people who are not doing Hajj. But it's going to be Sunday for all arguments terms for the majority. But Sheikh Sulaiman Ghani is back on the line. I want to just go straight.
It'll be interesting to understand from Sheikh Sulaiman as to why he thinks Eid is going to be on a different day.
Yeah, Sheikh, do you want to take that? Sheikh, over to you again.
Yes,
Bismillah.
Yes, Jazakallah khairan, Abdul Akbar. I don't like moon fighting. I'm going to do moon fighting today after the sunset. This is the 29th of Zulqa'dah for those who are following the local sighting.
Okay.
So now you are asking me about Qurbani, and my question to you is, how is it possible for a moon hilal to be sighted as only 3.5 hour old crescent moon? Impossible anywhere in the world. So for the Hajj, their Hajj is valid. They can do the Eid according to the Riyadh authorities as to how they have declared. But for the rest of the world, and those who have started the month of Zulqa'dah, and today is the 29th, so we are going to look out for the 31-hour-old moon. And if it is sighted, then we will have our Eid al-Adha on Monday, 17 June. And the observation of the fast of Yom Arafah will be on Sunday, 16th of June. So when it comes to animal sacrifice, Qurbani, animal has to be sacrificed after the Eid prayer. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. And for that person who has an animal to sacrifice, then it needs to be, it is just mustahab, it is just a recommended action. إِذَا رَأَيْتُمَ الْهِلَالِ. When you see the hilal of Dhul Hijjah, for that one who has a Qurbani animal to sacrifice, then it is recommended that it doesn't shave his hair or trim his nails until the animal is sacrificed. So that is one point I wanted to draw you to your attention, why we should understand that the Hajj is kama yuhajju nas. The people Hajj are valid, even though we know they have started on an impossible claim citing 3.5 hours.
That's a really good point, Sheikh. Thank you for clarifying that, because of course people will have family members or people will be going on Hajj if they haven't left already, and they'll be concerned about what you've just said. And what you're saying is, because this decision is not in their hands, it's in the hands of an authority, if you like, that is facilitating the Hajj for them, their Hajj will still be valid.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's very clear.
Hajj will be valid, yes.
And Sheikh, what about us? So I want to just clarify, Qurbani is something that every person has to do, but who has to give Qurbani? What's specifically, is it all men? Is it all women? Is it for children? Is it for all members of the family? Can you do it for deceased relatives as like a sadaqah as well? What's the recommendation here, Sheikh?
Yeah, it is similar for every, the adult and those who have the sufficient amount of means. There is the opinion that one adult responsible for the family can sacrifice one animal, but the general ruling is that everyone who is adult and has his own independent saving earnings should make his own animal sacrifice. So that means one goat, one sheep, one one share, and no chicken is allowed to be sacrificed.
Okay.
And therefore,
thank you for clarifying
the camel
that.
and the cow is the equivalent to 7 shares. So if anyone is sacrificing, we say, yes, you can sacrifice 1,000 chickens. It will not be a Qurbani. It has to be a goat or a sheep.
Thank you for clarifying that. So it has to be people who have the means to be able to do it, and every adult, male and female.
Male
correct?
or female. Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And so moving on to the shaving of the hair, I want to clarify that. So if I am in the UK and I am going to be sacrificing an animal, or I'm paying for a part sacrifice for one person, what do I need to do? Can I cut my hair? Can I shave my hair if I'm in the UK? I'm not a Haji. I'm just an ordinary person paying a charity to do Qurbani for me. Do I have to cut my hair? Or can I cut my hair?
This is very important that, you have to have had your Eid Salah. For example, if I'm doing my Eid on Monday, I will not expect my animal to be sacrificed on the day before. I will have to inform the butcher. Here in the UK, people are blindly following the Saudi dates, so therefore there will be those will be doing animal sacrifice on Sunday, which we believe it should be Yom Arafah. So now there's going to be confusion. The butchers are going to take your orders and they're going to sacrifice your animal a day before your actual Eid date, which is for local sighting or those who are going to follow these local dates. Then Monday, you cannot have any animal sacrifice a day before. So if the butcher sacrifices on your behalf a goat or whatever, that animal is not counted as Qurbani. It has to be after you have performed your Eid prayer.
Sheikh, that's not my question though, with respect. I hear you, but let's just agree to disagree that regardless of the day of the first of Dhul Hijjah, according to you it's tomorrow, and according to the Saudis it's today. I hear that. But let's just say, imagine someone, a normal person like you or me, we want to do a Qurbani. Some people say that you are not allowed to shave your hair until you have completed the Qurbani. Is that a correct opinion?
Yes, you have to first, once your animal is sacrificed, then you can trim your nails and then shave your head. That is correct, yes.
So the prohibitions apply.
But it's not a sin. If somebody did not do it, meaning there's no blame, it's just a recommended practice here.
Is it sunnah?
You are like sharing in the action of the Hujjaj, because they are in the state of ihram, and in that condition they do not trim the nails, they do not shave, they wait for the completing the animal sacrifice. They will then shave the head to be completely released from the ihram.
Very clear, very clear. So basically, Sheikh, when does that prohibition come into play? So imagine I make an order for Qurbani today, let's say tonight. I go onto a website and I pay a charity to sacrifice a goat for me, right? And my family, for example. Or I have 7 members of my family and we're going to pay for a cow in Bangladesh or Pakistan or even Palestine or somewhere like that. When does the prohibition of not cutting your hair or clipping your nails start as soon as you make the payment? When does the prohibition start?
No, normally you say that your recommended is when you see the moon of Dhul Hijjah.
Okay.
Then it starts from the month of Dhul Hijjah when it commences. So therefore, firstly, we are encouraged to sight that moon. When it is sighted and the month of Dhul Hijjah has been has commenced, then only you will. It is recommended not to shave or trim the nails. Yes. But I just want to emphasize, it's not like wajib and compulsory. It is just a recommended practice. We could say call it mustahab.
Okay, so it's mustahab. You don't have to do it. There's no sin on you if you don't do it. But if you do it, you're aligning with some of the sacrifices and abstentions the Hujjaj are making, and you're kind of connecting with them. And there's probably additional barakah and reward for you if you do that. Correct? But there's no harm if you don't.
Yeah, there's no harm. So it's like saying the Hujjaj, they in the state of ihram, they are not allowed to shave their hair, trim their nails until 10th of Dhul Hijjah, where they will do pelting, animal sacrifice, shaving of their head.
Yes.
And then they will release themselves, but they cannot release themselves from the ihram until that animal has been sacrificed. So then they will shave the head.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Very clear. Very clear, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair for that. And let me ask you another question, if I may. Obviously we're coming up or we're approaching, or we are in, depending on whichever day you go by, on the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. And why are these described as some of the best days? These 10 days are the best days. Can you tell us a bit more about that and where this description comes from?
Yeah, I mean, in the Quran we have in Surah Al-Fajr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath in the Quran, wal fajri wa layalin ashr, by the dawn and by the night and night. So, what it's saying that like in the month of Ramadan, the most superior of nights are the nights where you search for the night of Laylatul Qadr. But when it comes to the month of Dhul Hijjah, then it includes the 10 days are the most superior days of the whole year, better than even the days of Ramadan. And this has been substantiated by the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that there are no days which are more loved to Allah than these, the 10 days, meaning of Dhul Hijjah. And even the companion asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even jihad in the path of Allah, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, even jihad, meaning all your a'mal, all your actions, whether it is subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, your fasting, your charity, every action you do, it is really the best of days to increase in good deeds, except for that person who went out with his life and his wealth and he did not return with anything. And this is based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are days which also coincide with the actions of the Hujjaj, where they are fulfilling a very important pillar of Islam. So there is a lot of prayer. And also in these days, there is a day which is where Shaitan is most humiliated, and it is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, where the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, whoever fasts on Yawm Arafah, it will expiate 2 years of sins, that is the previous years or the coming years, meaning 2 years of sins will be, for minor sins will be forgiven. So now you have the reward of fasting every day from the 9 days. There are those who do that. So they are including many type of a'mal, fasting, your salah, and your tilawah, and your azkar, and your sadaqah, and action is being greatly. These are the best days of the year. So these are some of the main points. And also we are in the last month of the Islamic calendar. So it is very special when you know that the Hujjaj, when they're setting out on this journey, they are hoping for all of these sins to be forgiven. And Almighty Allah is so merciful that He gives everyone also so great reward that you did not want, and there will be those who will never be able to set out on the journey of Hajj. So the mercy of Allah is that you do these a'mal in action, and your deeds are multiplied manifold, and it's the most beloved days in the eyes of Almighty to do
MashaAllah.
an a'mal.
Jazakallah khair for that, Sheikh. Really, really important reminder there for all our listeners who are tuning in right now and listening to the recording as well, which is we want to maximize our return on our investment for these days, right? And this is the way to do it, mashallah. These 10 days, just like the last 10 odd nights of Ramadan, the last odd nights of Ramadan are critical, important, and blessed. These 10 days are critical and important and blessed. And I don't think as Muslims, we always put emphasis on these 10 days outside of Ramadan. And it's really important that we do that. And we use this as an opportunity to give charity where we want to obviously perform the Qurbani if we can afford to, and also conduct other good deeds as well. Like, as you mentioned, Sheikh, you mentioned fasting is an important one, especially on the day of Arafat, but even before then, the extra fasting that you mentioned is highly recommended. Giving charity, extra dhikr or worship, just doing extra in these 10 days is highly recommended, right, Sheikh?
Yes, correct. So there will be those who will be keeping all the 9 fasts on these days. Every fast, there is an opinion that you get the reward of 1 year's fast, meaning the reward is so great of every fast you keep.
MashaAllah.
And in Ramadan, the nights are superior because there is the night of Layl Qadr. So these days are more superior in all of the days of the year.
Amazing.
And we should take advantage of these very special dates and also increase in great a'mal actions. May Allah Ta'ala accept.
And the hadith that you mentioned, Sheikh, about jihad is seen as fighting in the cause of Allah, fighting in the way of Allah, is seen as a very admirable action when it's just and fair, and when that's conducted. And the hadith says that these days are even greater in reward than that action, and that's saying something, right? MashaAllah.
Yes, indeed. That is how it is to substantiate the greatness and the superiority of these very special days. And no doubt, when the Hujjaj are doing this action, and imagine Al-Hajj al-Mabrur, his reward is nothing but Jannah. And can you imagine when the Hujjaj, when they are going to engage in coming first time face to face with the Kaaba, our Qibla. So on the one hand, you have this action happening there, and it is وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ. They are fulfilling a duty man has unto Allah. And the rest of the Ummah, wherever they are really also sharing in many of the action of the Hujjaj. When you enter into the state of Ihram,
MashaAllah.
you know that you will not be able to do it, even though some actions which are lawful.
Yeah, Sheikh,
And
we're running
now
out of
they
time. Just a quick one. Sorry to interrupt you, Sheikh. One last question quickly, because we only got like 30 seconds. But giving qurbani for a deceased relative, is that something people could do as well?
Yeah, you are allowed to do and sacrifice if you as long as you do your own animal sacrifice, which is wajib, and now you want to do an additional, there is no harm to make an additional extra qurbani. May Allah Ta'ala accept, especially in the places
Mashallah.
where it is needed. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Sheikh Suleiman Ghani, it's always a pleasure talking to you and having you on this program. We appreciate your time on this program, and hopefully, inshallah, Sheikh, you need to come into Luton. When are you coming to Luton? Oh, you've lost him. Unfortunately, but let me just go ahead and thank Sheikh Suleiman Ghani in absentia there for sharing his perspectives, and also, most importantly for us, reminding us about the essentials of qurbani. MashaAllah. Well, Jazakallah khair. Listen, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Saab. After the break, we're talking about the Muslim vote. Stay tuned for that really important topic that's going to be impacting all of us in a few weeks' time. How do you vote? You're going to vote for Conservative, Lib Dem, Labour, Independent, or none of the above? Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Asr.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज़े असर का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan has been sponsored by Ideal Properties. Contact us on 01582 72 1110 or log on to www.idealpropertiesltd.co.uk.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Would you like to sponsor the Azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7 o'clock.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the third part of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 7th of June 2024. I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, joined in the studio by Barrister Saiful Islam. Islam, sir. Oh my God, I can't believe it's June already.
Yes, it's and it'll go. It'll go.
It's crazy.
It just comes and goes.
It's coming and going. It's 2024, and we're in June, middle of the year.
And I've noticed that it goes quicker as you get older.
It is true, you know. I haven't noticed that yet, but I'm starting to notice the trend. MashaAllah. Well, listeners, welcome to tonight's program. Of course, we're beaming out to the good people of Luton and surrounding areas tonight, and also to the good people of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, Peterborough, and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. Welcome to all of you. So far, we've talked about the Gaza situation. We just talked about Qurbani and Eid. I don't know about you, but look, MashaAllah, and Saiful Islam Sahab, we know we live in an ummah where we have disagreements.
That's right.
And we even have the four madhabs, you know, and they vary slightly in their interpretation on various things, and that's okay. You know, and the madhabs teach us that we can agree to disagree. So if you have a Hanafi standing next to you that doesn't want to say Ameen after Fatiha, but you want to shout as loud as you want because there is legitimate reason for doing that,
that's right.
You can't criticize the next person. So if somebody has an opinion, a valid opinion about doing something, and it's a valid opinion and is connected to Quran and authentic Sunnah, then we should respect that and agree to disagree, right?
Absolutely.
And that's sometimes as Muslims we can't necessarily do. We have to be the right ones, and then we end up in argument. But if only we were like the Muslims hundreds of years ago, where they would debate, they would discuss, they would stand up and deliberate on, okay, what's your opinion? Oh, well, here's my opinion. What's your opinion? And they wouldn't end up killing each other or slandering each other or defaming each other.
On that note, can I just share a hadith that I on the question of this disunity issue and difference of opinion? We know that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was well known for his knowledge of the Quran, right? We know that from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was an occasion when he was going past this person who was reciting the Quran in a way that wasn't taught to him, wasn't taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he decided to take him with him to Rasulullah. He first of all told him off and took him to Rasulullah and complained. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I found him reciting the Quran in a way that you haven't taught us. So what do you think? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's face went red, and with looking at Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu with disapproval, saying something along the lines of, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive me, I don't remember the word for word, the verbatim version, but he said something along the lines, the nations that came before you were destroyed because they disagreed.
Wow.
He is right and you are right. By Allah, do not argue.
Wow, subhanAllah, look at that.
Yeah. Now we're talking about a complaint from somebody like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who was known for his position and his knowledge of the Quran, and even his
high stature.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is how I suppose this is an example of how far we should be prepared to go to respect the opinion of another, especially when it is supported with evidence.
Absolutely. And if people are doing Eid on Monday and not Sunday next week, then that's their opinion, and we should respect that. We shouldn't frown upon them. I mean, there is an argument that says for the sake of unity, we should all try and do it on the same day. But then how far do you take that argument, especially if you know everyone's jumping off a cliff, right? Do you follow them? or do you go with the most accurate opinion according to you?
Yeah.
And that's a debate that needs to be had.
That's right.
And I think there's two opinions there. We need to respect each other.
Exactly. And you may be aware of that incident where two groups of Sahabas who would travel together and they did their Asr at different times. And they had different opinions, but one was right and one was wrong. But what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He said, the one that was right will get 2 rewards, and the one that one will get one reward.
Absolutely.
So
it's a win-win, right?
Exactly.
And ones who do it correctly, and of course we should aspire. Our intention should be to do it correctly. We want to intend to do the best we can, right?
That's right.
And mashallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide us all. The
Ameen.
listeners,
Ameen.
Jazakallah khair for that, Saiful Islam sahib. Well, listeners, we're going to go on to our next topic right now. It's a really important topic as well, and it kind of touches on what we've just been talking about, which is about agreeing to disagree. But there's some things in this country. I was born and raised here. Many of us were born and raised here. Many of us, emigrated here from a very young age. Whatever the case is, many of us are British citizens, and I regard myself as more British than I am from my ethnic heritage. Without a doubt, I know more about Britain and the UK and the customs and traditions that we've developed here than anything else. And of course, I believe that part of my British identity, first and foremost, is my Islam, is my religion, is how I practice. So when we saw the situation in Gaza exacerbate the way it did, and allegedly the crimes committed the way they were, many of us were hurt that the UK and the other countries around the world were not speaking out as much in the early days as they maybe are today. And even today, we're seeing crimes being committed potentially in Gaza, with 35 plus people being killed just recently in an attack that took place that was meant to be surgical in nature. It's quite disturbing. But the political nature of this country is that we have a government and then we have an opposition.
Yep.
And most of the time we have either a Labour government or a Conservative government, and then we have similar in opposition, the opposite in opposition. And now here's the thing. The crazy thing is that many of us who belong to the Muslim faith have often aligned with the Labour values when it comes to Palestine and the treatment of the Palestinians. However, that changed recently with Keir Starmer's positioning and his lack of calling for a ceasefire. And that startled many people. We saw lots of Muslim councillors resign over the last few months. We've even seen some resign recently because the candidate that was meant to be standing for Chingford was not selected for Labour, and more councillors resigned, not just in Chingford, but actually around London and UK. So it's a complex situation. And what's interesting is that a group of Muslims and Muslim bodies have got together and said, listen, enough is enough. We don't think that these organizations, these traditional parties are representing Muslim interests anymore. We need to do something about it. I want to learn more about what they're doing, what's going on, how they're going about it. And I'm delighted to welcome a number of guests on the line right now. We've got Abu Bakr Nanabawa, who is the coordinator and spokesperson for the initiative The Muslim Vote. And he's worked in grassroots Muslim organizations, and his work at the Muslim Vote aims to unite and coordinate Muslim populations. We're going to find out more about that in a second. And we've also got Samaya Ahmed on the line as well. And she's a community organizer with the Muslim Vote and has been visiting different cities across England to mobilize the Muslim vote. So assalamu alaikum to both of you. Welcome to the program. You're live on the radio right now. We're delighted to have you on. Let me start with you, Abu Bakr, if I may, first and foremost. And if you can help me understand what inspired the creation of the Muslim vote.
Assalamu alaikum. The scenes that we have seen since October the 7th, and especially the cowardice of the Labour Party in November, when they had an opportunity to be moral actors, to stand up against a genocide. It was very clear at that point that Israel had no restraint. They had, been engaged in collective punishment for a number of weeks, which the Labour Party had actually supported. Keir Starmer had come out and said that the Israelis have the right to commit such atrocities. And not only did the Labour Party refuse to back a ceasefire in November, they actively whipped their MPs against it and removed people from the front bench for voting for a ceasefire, and it was at that point that the Muslim vote was born. And the reason for this is not just about Palestine, but the Palestinian cause and the genocide in Gaza was a confirmation of a truth that many of us already knew deep in our heart, which is that mainstream political parties in the UK do not care about Muslims, do not care about their opinions, do not care about their values, and do not really care about their lives. Because for us, when we open our phones and we go on Twitter, Instagram, and we see the scenes of people who would look like our children, our younger siblings, our mothers, fathers being brutally murdered indiscriminately, and the government and the opposition both come out and fail to do anything to stop it and continue to supply arms to those organizations. It was a confirmation that we have to step up and we actually have to make our voices and our opinions have value. And that's why the Muslim vote was born.
Thank you, Abu Bakr, for that. And I think if we had those political parties, representatives from those parties, they would say they do care about Muslims and they do represent Muslim interests. And indeed, many of them have been canvassing around lots of Muslim issues over the last years. So they may disagree with what you have to say, but I'm sure there are many people listening right now that can definitely align with what you're saying. Saiful Islam, sir, what's your reaction from when you hear about organizations like the Muslim Vote being formed to kind of provide, an opposite to what's out there as mainstream?
I mean, listening to Brother Abu Bakr, I can understand completely the sentiments, and it does make sense. And of course, as to what may come of it, as to what may be the result, whether it will benefit or not, is a different issue, and it's not where I'm going.
Sure.
But I understand exactly why it's been done. But in response to what you said about, there being certain MPs here and there speaking up for Palestine and Gaza and saying we care for the Muslims and so forth. Yes, there may be, but the bottom line is when you have good people like Tony Benn, George Galloway, and Jeremy Corbyn individually being good doesn't really achieve much, because you can.
I don't personally,
Yeah.
I don't think George Galloway is good. Personally, that's my opinion, but we can we can just debate that later.
I'm not certifying him as being good. I'm just giving you an example. I mean, among the many MPs that we see George Galloway does speak up at certain, in response to certain situations.
Key situations.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. So we ought to give credit where it's due.
True.
And so it's just an example for Tony Benn, for example, Jeremy Corbyn. These are known to be decent people who have
late Tony Benn.
That's right. Late Tony Benn.
Yeah.
And they have tried their best to do what they can for what they believe to be right. But they have achieved very little because they were led by people who didn't agree with them. So individuals here and there speaking good and saying the right things doesn't really do what needs to be done. So, and this is why I agree with this initiative where independence is called for.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Saiful Islam. So let me go back to Abu Bakr, and we're going to get Samaya on in a moment as well and see how her mobilization efforts are going. But Abu Bakr, back to you, which is the Muslim vote really that powerful? I mean, are we really such large numbers that we can move the needle on key issues that matter to us? I mean, what say you?
The Muslim vote is only as powerful as a community believes it to be. We live in a system where most people, unfortunately, do not come out to vote. If you take into consideration voter registration and the lack of it, really, a reality is that less than 50% of Muslims will turn out to vote in many places during general elections. If we can actually mobilize those people, get them registered and get them to vote, then the Muslim vote will be incredibly powerful. There's over 80 constituencies in this country where Muslims are 10% or more of the population. There's 3 where they are 50% or more, 2 or 3. We have huge numbers. We have a huge ability to make a real impact, and we are a growing, maturing population. We've been in this country for 3-4 generations now. We really do have the ability to make a difference. We just have to believe as a community that we have that power, and then unify behind candidates who represent the values of our community, not just like a party or a thing, but actually individuals who represent communities, Muslim
Yeah,
and
and
non-Muslim, and
I
don't
want to
just
pick up
go
on
to the
that,
window.
because there's a confusion as well, and I like the word that you mentioned about unification, right? Because nobody's going to say that we shouldn't be unified in terms of how we vote and who we vote for. The problem we have is that in some constituencies, and Samaya may have visited them already, is that especially in Luton, we have a number of Muslim candidates coming forward. They're not just independent, but they actually belong to Labour, Conservatives. They not so much Labour and Conservative. I don't think there are any Muslim candidates there, so let me correct myself there. But when it comes to the Workers' Party and George Galloway's party, another kind of fringe parties, shall we say, there are Muslim candidates. So what's your initiatives direction there? So if you have multiple Muslim candidates, how are you deciding who to quote unquote bless as the preferred candidate? What's your criteria, shall I say?
So I just want to preface this by saying, really importantly, the faith of the individual running doesn't matter. For example, in Holborn, we have endorsed Andrew Feinstein against Waste Islam, Andrew Feinstein being of Jewish heritage and Weiss being of Muslim heritage. Why? Or being a Muslim, sorry. But why? Because Andrew Feinstein's politics are vastly superior, and Andrew Feinstein's politics reflect the values of the Muslim community much better than Weiss Islam could, whose wife and family have very close relationship with the Labour right. So it's very clear that this is not about getting Muslims into power. This is about getting values into power. And that's really what we want to see, right? It doesn't matter if someone's a Workers' Party, Green Party, or independent. As a community, we need to get together and find one unifying individual from whichever party, bar Labour or Conservative, who we can unify the community around. But it's really about their values, not about their faith or their, whether they're Bengali or Arab or Somali, but it's about what political values do they
How do you navigate that? Because I mean, you know how Muslims, Abu Bakr, and I'm sure Saiful Islam, Muslims as well. We're quite tribal in nature, right? Even in Luton, we've got many mosques, and and it's okay that we're kind of like that, because this is the way social interaction works. But in some mosques, you get a strong kind of South Asian population. In some mosques, you get more of a North African population going there. In some mosques, you get a Gujarati population, for example, going there. So we are quite tribal. So how do you navigate choosing a preferred candidate that maybe the Bangladeshi community have, and then another candidate that maybe the North African community prefer? How are you reconciling which candidates to actually go forth and recommend? Because I know on your website you can put in a postcode, and then it says, here's a suggested person that we recommend you vote for. I know that's not the case for all constituencies yet, and you're updating that regularly. But at the same time, how do you navigate that? And how do you recommend we as Muslims navigate that in our respective constituencies? Tough question, I know, but I'm curious to know how you're managing this.
Yeah, well, there's two parts to this, right? There's the very easy answer, which is this is a long-term initiative, which means we won't in the next 5 weeks. I can't promise you unity in every Muslim constituency, right? As a community, we're not quite there yet. However, in 15, 20 years, we should be able to, as we build up trust in the Muslim vote brand, and we keep on working and building local infrastructure.
To me, in
Which
15, 20
includes
years,
people from
bro.
the
In
Bengali.
15, 20 years, bro. Saiful Islam, we're gonna both be on crutches, man. I need it done now.
But in the short term, I mean, look, we're trying our best to unify people. We are really working to bring people from all the different communities together to sit with them and say, look, come behind one candidate. And alhamdulillah, we've had success. I mean, in Bethnal Green, we've had candidates stand down. In Dewsbury and Batley, we've had a candidate stand down. In Oldham, we've had, alhamdulillah, people have shown themselves to be selfless, have shown themselves to care about the cause more than themselves. And that's generally, that is the best way. Like, sit down with the candidates and ask them, like, why are you doing this? Remember why you're doing this. You're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this for the Muslims. You're doing this for your local community, to improve the NHS and for the people in Gaza. So stand down if you believe there's a better alternative. And really, that has been proven to be the most successful method currently.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Let me go back to Samaya, who has been patiently waiting as well. So Samaya, you're one of the people coordinating all the different activities going on across the UK. tell us a bit about what you're hearing from the different cities that you've visited, and what are you hearing from local people? Is there much contention, or is it very clear who people are going to vote for? Is it mostly independent candidates coming forward saying, vote for me because I'm pro-Gaza, a bit like what we have in Luton, or is it different? I'd be very curious to know what you're seeing on the ground.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, first of all. And thank you for having this discussion. What I'm seeing on the ground is quite interesting, because the level of engagement of people who would normally not engage in politics, in elections, in choosing who their representatives are, is significantly higher than previous years. And we've been around for quite a few election cycles so far. And if I go back to the point which Abu Bakr mentioned, which is this long-term vision of the project, I'd go as far to as a 25-year, for the short term, not even for the long term. What I've seen is that the community really does realize how infringed they are, and how disregarded they have become, and how weak their positions are when they're speaking to power and when they're speaking to representatives. So when you have on the ground, people writing to their MPs, telling them that this is what they think about what's happening, and this is what they want them to do in Parliament. We want our MPs to represent our views, right? That's why we write to them. That's why we petition them. We tell them that on this day there's going to be this motion presented in Parliament, and we want you to vote for a ceasefire and against the genocide. And the MPs come back and say, well, no, actually, we're not going to represent you. This is the direct translation of their action. And so when our communities realize this, that it becomes about attaching that higher political value to our presence. We have been marginalized for too long. Islamophobia has become so institutionalized, and at the same time denied, to the extent that there's clear Islamophobia happening, but still in front of mainstream media, mainstream political parties, but then they still deny it. And it's about attaching that higher political value, and to do so, we need to build the infrastructure. I've been to quite a few.
Let me ask you. Sorry to interrupt you, but let me ask you this question, which is, what do you say to skeptics that say, "Listen, Muslim vote, that's not going to make a difference. We get a couple of MPs in that are pro-Muslim values and align with Muslim interests and what the Muslim community is looking for. That's not going to make a difference today, or maybe even in 25 years." What do you say to those skeptics?
We truly believe that Islam is the solution, not just to our problems, but to the problems of this society we're living in. We believe in the social justice that Islam brings, and we know for a fact that this is exactly what mainstream parties fear. We know that they do not want equality between different ethnic
So are you
components.
trying to convert everyone to Islam? Like, what is, because I just heard a moment ago that the initiative isn't religion-based, it's values-based, it's principle-based. So what's the ambition?
Our values, and our values are universal values. People have realized that they've been looking at Gaza and what's happening there, and have looked at the patience of people going through an awful genocide, not just a genocide as a collective, but every single day there's a new genocide happening, and they're still patient, they're still resilient, they still say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, and we're in the first 10 days of the Hijjah, and if we think about what that signifies, and the fact that Ibrahim alayhi salam stood in a barren land and called out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to call out. We never knew, or he never knew, we do, but he never knew at the time that the answer to that call will come all these millions of years later. Or I'll say thousands, they're not millions of years, I'll say thousands of years later. And this is I won't say the exact same, of course it's not. But if we call out, if we say to people that, we have a solution to the NHS, we have a solution to the rising cost of living, we have a solution to discrimination, and we have a solution to ethical domestic and foreign policies, and this is what they are. This is how we can bring them. Then
Thank you.
We put that call out and we wait.
Thank you for that, Sister Samaya. Let me go back to Abu Bakr on the line. Abu Bakr, we've already got a minute left, so I just want to quickly get some information from you. If people want to learn more about your initiative, the Muslim Vote, and the kind of directions that you're giving, where can they go to learn more?
Our website is themuslimvote.co.uk. Make sure you included the muslimvote.co.uk. Unfortunately, has been hijacked by the Reform Party and redirects to their page. So themuslimvote.co.uk is very clever of them, I must say, quite amusing. But themuslimvote.co.uk. Inshallah, we have our listed our list of recommended candidates on there. We also have social media, Instagram and Twitter under the same handle, the Muslim Vote. Feel free to find it, inshallah, and you'll see our list of recommended candidates and the work that we've been doing across the country.
Thank you for that. Well, Abu Bakr and Sister Samaya, thank you so much for joining us and working on this, what sounds like a very important initiative to mobilize the right values that represent the Muslim people. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if I can have a final word, make sure that everybody registers to vote. Without being registered, we're not voting.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Listeners, this is Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Saab. We're going to be taking a short break, but we're going to be talking to one of the scholars that we have regularly on this program, Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad. He's going to be telling us why we need to vote. I'll be putting some tough questions to him. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
With you 24 hours a day. Inspire.
Have you registered to vote in the upcoming general election? The deadline is fast approaching. You have until before midnight on the 18th of June 2024 to register. It's quick and easy to do. Just visit gov.uk and follow the instructions. Don't miss your chance to have a say in who represents you and the decisions that affect your life. Register to vote today at gov.uk. That's gov.uk. Remember, every vote counts. Make sure your voice is heard.
Enjoy quality and tasty 100% authentic halal Chinese and Thai food from Gao Express, brought to you by the team behind Top's Pizza in Luton. Choose from all your delicious Chinese and Thai favourites. Then order for delivery or collection from Gao Express in Wellington Street, Luton, Marketplace, Stevenage, and now also on Nightingale Road in Hitchin. Open daily midday till late. Find the number or order online at Gao, that's Gao, express.co.uk, or like Gao Express on Facebook.
Days of Dhul Hijjah on Inspire FM. Did you know it is sunnah to fast on the first 9 days of Dhul Hijjah? However, if you are performing Hajj, you shouldn't fast on the night of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Arafah.
Had an accident, a bump, trip or fall? Then you need Claims Specialists, your first choice for accident claims. The Specialist Claims Company on Dunstable Road in Luton. With excellent access to expert solicitors and on a no-win, no-fee basis, Claims Specialists use their 30 years experience to help get you the best compensation possible. For injuries at work, taxi, PCO and private hire incidents, road accidents and vehicle damage, medical negligence, plus rented housing disrepair. In short, when you need to make any claim, click on claimspecialists.co.uk or call 01582 733 222. For the tastiest sizzling steaks around, book now for Taurus Luton Boot Street, LU1 2EP.
And not just for the best grass-fed and dry-hung aged halal steaks, as Taurus Luton also serve amazing chicken dishes, burgers, sumptuous sides, salads and vegetarian options, with mouth-watering mocktails too. All this and with excellent service. View the menu, book your table, or even party or celebration event at taurusluton.co.uk or call 01582 750 213.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरा नाम किरण है। कोट कश्मीर ऑर्फन्स रिलीफ ट्रस्ट मेरा एक खूबसूरत घर है जहां मेरे साथ सैकड़ों यतीम और बेसहारा बच्चों की तालीम व तरबियत और पुरसुकून माहौल में परवरिश हो रही है, और ये सब कुछ आपके तावन से मुमकिन है। अल्लाह से दुआ है कि अल्लाह करीम आपको सदा सलामत रखे, और उम्मीद है कि आप इसी तरह अपना प्यार, मोहब्बत और तावन जारी रखेंगे। कोट UK ऑफिस 0300123774 court.org.uk।
فتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت. As Allah says, depend on Allah, depend on Allah, the one that lives and never dies.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7:30.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the fourth and final part of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Sahib. Of course, mashallah, it's been an amazing show so far. Saiful Islam Sahib, anything stand out to you so far about the program so far? Any of the topics? We talked about Gaza. We just talked about the Muslim vote. We also talked about Qurbani. What do you normally give Qurbani? Do you give a camel, a goat?
No, usually a cow from the whole family.
The cow, yeah? That's what I normally do. I normally do a cow.
Yeah.
But I will say that some countries are cheaper than others, so people can do a cow. And it's, I think Palestine is probably the most expensive these days because of procuring a cow in that region, right?
Yes.
It can be quite challenging.
That's right.
And how do you normally do it? Do you normally just go to a charity or?
Usually we tend to do it in Bangladesh, where we have families who do it, and it's so much more convenient. We just
So you just pay a family member. They go and buy it. They go to the market and actually buy the cow.
And we see the cow, and we see, so
that's
we
lovely.
do it that way.
That's a beautiful way of doing it, because then you get a video as well, maybe, or a photo. I've done that in Pakistan as well.
Yeah.
And you get a different feeling when you see the cow that you've purchased being sacrificed for your family, right?
That's right. Yeah.
MashaAllah. And then obviously the meat gets distributed to the poor and people who need the meat, and everyone, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And the other thing, I think the other thing that stuck out to me was this Muslim vote organization. I was thrown a little bit when first. I'm all in favor of giving a message.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Reacting to what's been happening and the lack of concern towards the Muslims and so forth in Palestine.
Yeah.
Doing something about it so they know that we are here, right?
Definitely.
I'm all in favor of that. But then to say, for an organization to say, well, we've got a 20-25-year plan, on the one hand to say, Islam is the solution, and then to say for the next 20-25 years we want everybody to get involved with parliament, right? An organization that claims to be supreme in power, an organization that claims to have the same power as God, and say, well, Islam is the solution, but our solution is given by Allah elsewhere. But here, we have our own solution for the next 25 years. It just doesn't make sense.
There's a bit of a contradiction there, right? And I would love to, it's a really good point, and I would love to put that to Sheikh Haytham, who's joining us in about 10 minutes' time. He's currently leading Salat al-Asr wherever he is. And I think we do need to try to understand, and again, it comes back to the point we were making earlier, Saiful Islam Sahib, which is, we have differences of opinion in this ummah. And, we need to agree to disagree. And when it comes to, for example, moon sighting, we need to agree to disagree. We have different opinions. And I think voting is also one of those topics where there is an opinion that says we should vote, and there's an opinion that says we should not vote. And I'm very curious to learn more about the opinion that says we should vote, because, I'm very familiar, a bit like to the argument that you describe of the, people's decision not to vote because of the idea that, you know, there is no other lawmaker that's more supreme than Allah, and then subscribing to an institution or a mechanism or a framework that completely ignores that element,
Overrides it.
Exactly.
Can I, as a believer, be a member of that organization? It's a dangerous territory.
It's a difficult one, right?
Yeah.
And for some, it's a no-brainer. It's not even difficult. It's black and white.
Yeah.
Right. And the question is, what about the grey in between? And because there isn't a debate in the Muslim community saying, well, we're living in Luton, we're living in East London, we're living in Nottingham or Derby or Sheffield, where people are listening to us today. Do we what if we have, for example, let me give you an example. In Luton, there could be an argument that says we've had the English Defence League, you know, these far-right nutcases that have been causing division amongst communities.
Yes.
Imagine we had a right-leaning MP. They could make our lives hell, potentially. So if there is a threat of a right-leaning or a far-right MP to come into power, isn't it better that Muslims mobilize and get somebody who's more leaning towards them than to allow somebody far worse to come into power? And I think the word and the phraseology that's used is the lesser of the evils, right?
Sure.
What's your understanding of the thought process of people that may be against that?
Well, I'm aware of another argument where they say, well, obviously the perfect time to make those compromises would have been at the time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions were persecuted in Mecca, and they were tortured and martyred, and everything was happening at a time when the Quraysh came and said, I tell you what, how about we worship your God one year and you worship ours one year? How about we do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That would have been the perfect time to do it, because that would have brought about comfort for the believers, right? But that was not the right thing to do. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Al-Kafirun, telling Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam exactly what to say to them, right? So if in those circumstances, those sacrifices were not made, are we really in a worse position than they were at the time? I don't know. That's the other argument I hear.
That's really interesting, food for thought, and it definitely is an opinion that's very valid and has strength to the arguments. Equally, it could be argued on the other side that that was a different situation, and this is a different situation, and you can't equate.
Well, I'll tell you why it's not a different situation. There are some who believe that they could go into parliament and take key position and then make changes from within to bring about change. Well, if at the time of the Quraysh, at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the view that, hold on, if we rule by Islam for a year, that would give us a lot of time to convert people, right? But even that wasn't taken up.
Yeah.
But somehow we think that we can, become judges and MPs and this and that and bring about changes from within.
Yeah, and that's not really happening, because, and I think a good example of that potentially could be argued that a good example of that is the current situation in Gaza and Palestine.
Yeah.
But then counter to that, it could be argued that there is good happening. Like if you look at even the International Criminal Court, a lot of the prosecutors are actually, at least from their names, look like they're from Muslim descent or Muslim origin, and they are doing the work.
But is it not most of the countries that spoke out against the genocide in Gaza, were they not from non-Muslim countries? Were they not? So it wasn't really to do with the faith, was it?
Yeah, there you go. So lots of food for thought there. And listeners, what do you reckon? 01582 481 822. I think this is a really important topic to talk about. And on this program, we do not shy away from the elephant or elephants in the room, and we want to address these topics because listeners, if these topics are on your mind, they're going to be on our mind on this program, and I'd love for you to call in and share your perspectives. Will you be voting in the election? And some people are saying, you know what, voting shouldn't, whether we're voting or not shouldn't even be a discussion point. It's a no-brainer. We should be voting, and we need to kick a certain party out that did not support the Gaza ceasefire, and we need to give them a lesson. So for some camps, it's a no-brainer. For other camps, it's very strongly associated with the Islamic principles based on what you've described, Saiful Islam Sahib, and that is a definite dilemma that we need to understand. So joining us in a bit, in a few minutes' time, we are going to be speaking to Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, and I would ask my producer to make sure that Sheikh Haytham is not on the StreamYard, but actually is on the phone line, because I want this to be a clear call. So if we can make sure we call Sheikh Haytham on a landline and not necessarily on our other connection, I think that's going to be important, because we want to make sure we can get a clear viewpoint from the Sheikh on this topic. Also, listeners, I want to share with you that there's a lot going on around the world right now. And of course, we saw the debate between the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, or the current Prime Minister, let's see how long he lasts as a Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer earlier on this week. And many of you got a chance to see that debate, and many of you did not. But I do encourage you to watch those debates, because it is interesting. And there is a kind of dividing line that's starting to be formed now between the two parties. And of course, there's always an opinion that says whichever party is in power, the civil service is the common denominator and the constant that never changes, and therefore a lot of our policies never really change. I would kind of slightly agree with that, but there are some local policies and national policies that do change depending on which party is in power. So, for example, Keir Starmer has promised, as part of one of his 5 promises that he will change, is introducing VAT on independent school fees. And that's going to hit a lot of people, and a lot of people make the assumption that children, whose parents send them to independent schools, to private schools, are wealthy and well off. That's not always the case. No. People decide to send their children to an independent school because they want the best for their children, and they make a lot of sacrifices for that. And I happen to be one such person. I mean, my kids, all my girls, go to an independent school because I felt that the government provision for them was not going to allow them to maximize their potential. I work really hard to be able to pay those fees, and they are expensive. At the same time, when I hear that Labour is going to be adding a 20% VAT tax on the school, not on me, but on the school, and then it's up to the school to decide what they charge me as a parent, seems a little bit controversial. And they're going to use that money, they're saying, the billion, I think it's 1.7 billion they're going to unlock from that initiative. Then they want to actually use that money to hire more teachers. And the question is this the right way to go about it? And I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think they're also going to go, a lot of people, the independent school bodies and all these organizations that, are umbrella groups for independent schools, will take the government to court. Do you think there's much standing to this? Because I think what's interesting is I read a statistic which said that we're going to be the first country in the world that taxes education in this way. Yeah. I mean, do you think that this could be go into the courts and stay in the courts for a while?
Difficult to say. But I mean, this is just something else, isn't it? So another new source of revenue, isn't it? At the end of the day, I mean, we know there was a time when we didn't have poll tax, and that changed to council tax, and so every so often something new comes up, and because there is a need to keep increasing and finding new ways to raise monies, and obviously they will come up with justifications for that. Yeah. But it's not a topic that I have studied, and so it's difficult to say. Actually.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. And I hear you. So I think the impact of that is going to be interesting. But what I do know is that there are lots of bodies preparing the case to take the government to court and say that this is unfair. I don't know what legal precedent they intend to use to make their case. But I think it will be quite interesting to see how the courts decide. And whether,
the thing is, though, just like I was saying earlier, supremacy of parliament. If an act of parliament has been passed, then the court does not have the power to question legislation. We know that. So that is what
I enforce that act, right?
Yeah, that's right. The only purpose of the court is to interpret the laws passed by Parliament, right? And that's how Parliament is supreme. If, however, this law is passed by way of secondary legislation based on a primary piece of legislation, then it can sometimes be challenged on the basis that this is not an accurate interpretation of that law, and therefore they judicially review on one of the three grounds. Like I said, because I don't know what's been going on that particular issue, it's difficult to say.
That's interesting. And could it be argued that the acts of Parliament, the law basically that Parliament creates, isn't always covering all cases, right? It doesn't cover all angles, all scenarios, all the ambiguity. It's impossible to do that, right? There's always going to be something that comes along. And that's where you're saying the court comes in.
This is where the common law comes in.
The common law comes
Case
in.
law.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So for example, the law of negligence that we have at the moment.
Medical negligence or any negligence?
Negligence, generally.
General negligence. Okay.
Until 1936, that law didn't even exist. And the first time it came into being was when two friends, do I have a minute to share it?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Right. So basically what happened was very, very interesting. I think it was called Donahue and Stevenson, two friends. They went to a bar and one friend went to the counter and ordered 2 bottles of ginger beer. He took it to the table and they both sat down and they started drinking it straight from the bottle without pouring into the glass. The friend that was given the bottle, not the one that bought it, he started drinking it, and then halfway through, he decided to pour the rest of it into the glass. And a decomposed snail came out of it.
Okay.
He became sick. He became unwell. What's his remedy? He couldn't he couldn't sue his friend because it was a gift. His friend couldn't sue the cafe because he didn't suffer the injury.
The snail wasn't in his drink.
That's right.
Yeah.
The friend couldn't sue the cafe because he didn't have a contract.
He didn't buy the drink.
He didn't buy the drink. So we had that issue, right? So then it went to court, and it was through the court that came out with the principle that anybody that produces a product, they have a duty of care towards the end user of that product,
regardless of who purchased it.
That's right. So that's how, and this is an example of how new law develops, and then based on that, later on, many years later sometimes, Parliament either passes legislation to confirm that or just leaves it as it is because it's working fine.
I see. Wow, that's amazing. Amazing.
Otherwise, other than that, the court's primary function is to simply interpret the intention of Parliament. And therefore, a court is never able to say Parliament was wrong. Never. And this is why, when, for example, they passed the Human Rights Act, 1998, right? Whenever somebody challenged a piece of legislation, saying that it's wrong because of it's contrary to the human rights law, they would take it to the courts. And the courts, even if that legislation was found to be in breach of the human rights law, the courts were not allowed to say Parliament is wrong.
Because Parliament is supreme.
Parliament is supreme. So what they could do was that they could make a declaration saying that that law and that law is incompatible. So they would call it a declaration of incompatibility and then leave it to Parliament to rectify.
So it's up to the legislators to decide if they want to make those compatible.
Exactly. So these are just some of the examples to demonstrate and confirm the argument that Parliament is supreme. There is none above Parliament in this society.
Not even the judges can override. And help me understand this. I know this is turning into a law lecture.
That's right.
about the instruments of how the court works and everything else, but it's really interesting. But what happens then when something gets to the Supreme Court? So if things escalate,
Supreme Court is the highest of all the courts. But it's not higher than Parliament.
It's still not higher than Parliament.
No, still not higher than Parliament.
So even the Supreme Court justices, they can't override Parliament.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, if you just go into Google and just type in supremacy of Parliament, you will see that this is one of the pillars of this system.
Mm. And obviously, who controls parliament? It's people like you and me. It's men, right, who are making, and women who are making decisions.
The MPs
members of
obviously
parliament.
together
Yeah.
come together and they form the body of parliament, don't they?
That's
And
interesting.
then they pass the law by a majority.
Very interesting. Well, we've got Sheikh Haytham Al-Hadar on the line now. Thank you for that, Saif Islam Saab. And he is on the line right now. I'm going to talk to him about voting in the upcoming election. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you? Good evening.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. تقبل الله منا ومنكم. First, before we talk about just a minute, man. Before we talk about politics, let us say congratulations. The month of Dhul Hijjah commenced today, and today is a Jum'ah Mubarak to all of our audience, and also 10 blessed 10 days of Dhul Hijjah for everyone. Ameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Really appreciate that. And taqabbalallah minna wa minkum as well to you.
Ameen.
And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family and continue to bless you and all the listeners and the believers as well around the world. But Sheikh, let's go. We've only got you for around 7-8 minutes maximum, because obviously you were leading Salat al-Asr and you have now kindly joined us for a few minutes. But Sheikh, tell us from your point of view, why is it important that Muslims vote in this upcoming election from your angle?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. See, we are an ummah that is an active ummah. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. We are not a passive ummah. Okay. And whenever we go, we reside, we become citizens in any place, we have to make sure that this place is the best it can be. And this should be our vision as Muslims in the UK, to make UK a better place for everyone. Of course, once we say better, we say it according to the divine values, because divine values are the best values that people or human people, whether Muslims or non-Muslims, can live by. Now, there are many ways that we can influence the situation. If we are citizens, we should influence the situation according to different levels, or from different levels. And one key level to influence any situation in any country is the political level. No one can deny that. No one can deny that. No one can deny that. If the political situation has the biggest influence, along with economy, on any country, on any situation. Now, how can we influence the political situation? What do we mean by influencing the political situation? We need to make sure that the right people are there in the parliament, which is the legislative body, which is the body that also controls the execution of laws in the country. So the parliament, we need the right people.
Sheikh, one question on that. Sorry to interrupt you, Sheikh, but one question on that, because it's a question that's come up in this show as well before you joined, which is, what if parliament is regarded as supreme? So it's the highest form of legislator, even above, as far as it's concerned, above God or the creator.
Okay. Well, yeah, we will come to that. I was going to address this point. I know that this is a concern for so many brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So, but I was saying that we need to influence that body that has the legislation and maybe to a certain extent the execution power. Okay. Now, if this body, let us say that this body has the supreme power in this state, in the UK. Yeah. Now, what is better to influence that body, to change it, to make it as close as possible to the divine values, or to leave it, to legislate, to remain as far as possible to the divine values? I'm asking you a question. What do you think? Simple common sense.
Saiful Islam Saab, what do you think? What's the opinion?
When it comes to matters of Sharia, I don't believe my opinion, especially when I'm not qualified, is appropriate. I shouldn't give an opinion because
Common sense. common sense. Common sense. What is better? What is better? So this is the body that legislates for us, as someone says that it has the superpower. What is better? Just simple question. Okay, simple common sense. What is better? To influence that body to make it as close as possible to divine values, or to leave it, to be as far as it can be from the divine values.
The opinion I'm aware of will say that it is better to remain on the haqq, trust in Allah, and whatever the consequences, that consequence is your success.
No, that is not so. Then remaining in the haqq, you don't enjoin the good and forbid the evil and remain in the haqq.
By forbidding shirk, you are forbidding evil.
Yeah, so when you are trying to stop that legislation body, from committing shirk, yes, is it?
Well,
right
actually, Sheikh, we're not saying we are trying to stop them committing shirk. We are saying that wherever shirk is committed, we as believers should take no part in it, especially the believers.
Listen. You are not taking part of shirk. You are trying to minimize any evil that is taking place. How are you taking place in shirk?
Yeah, Sheikh, go ahead. We've only got 1 minute left, so you give your perspective. But Saiful Islam has given the perspective of the other side that may be having these thoughts as well. Yeah, go for it.
No, because this is just confusing people. That
it's an opinion, though. It's an opinion. Yeah.
No, it is not. It is an invalid opinion. Let me be patient. Unfortunately, those brothers who are echoing that opinion, they are just echoing it from just enthusiasm. I know that they are worried about that, but when you analyze that opinion from an Islamic perspective, this opinion is invalid, has no ground.
Sheikh, let's leave it there because unfortunately we've run out of time. But what we need to do is we need to get you on this program and spend a good half an hour on this topic so we can really dive deep. I don't like touching on topics very lightly, and I know you don't as well. So I want to give you time next week, inshallah, where we'll cover this topic properly. But listeners, this has been Friday Night Live with me, Abdul, Akbar, and Saiful Islam. So we'll be back next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Coming up next, English Talk Series. Continue listening to Inspire FM.